I remember the oppressive silence that hung over my home, a thick shroud of grief that enveloped me each morning since David vanished. It transformed our once vibrant Havenwood residence into a mausoleum of memories, echoing with the ghostly laughter of happier times. I poured myself a cup of strong diner coffee, the steam warming my chilled fingers as I stared at the blurry archival photos I'd collected, images of old town legends and folklore that had somehow become more than just stories. I searched for answers no one else seemed to believe existed. At that moment, I heard a low, dragging sound from downstairs, distinct and unsettling. It sliced through the pre-dawn quiet like a knife, pulling me from my troubled sleep at precisely 2:47 a.m. My heart raced as I strained to listen, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The sound was unlike anything I had encountered before, something far too eerie to be mere imagination. Creeping down the stairs felt like stepping into a nightmare. Each step was measured, my breath hitching in my throat as shadows danced along the walls. When I reached the living room, the sight before me turned my blood cold. There lay a man face down on my floor. My presence was an immediate, chilling confirmation of the stories I'd only read about, the urban legends whispered among children and dismissed by adults. I knelt beside him, my nurse's training overriding my terror momentarily as instinct kicked in. My hands trembled as they hovered above his back, fingers impossibly long and splayed against the polished hardwood floor, a stark contrast to the lifeless form before me. It struck me with horrifying clarity, this wasn't just any body, this was the reaching shadow from Havenwood folklore, finally manifest in my own home. A chill swept through me as realization settled in like a heavy fog. The eerie tales of dark figures lurking at night had come to life in the most dreadful way possible. The air thickened with dread, it felt suffocating as if even breathing would disturb whatever supernatural balance had brought this figure here. I stumbled back, gasping for air, trying to comprehend what lay before me. Panic surged within me like a tidal wave crashing against rocky shores. How could this be happening? Had David's disappearance drawn something dark into our lives? I wanted to scream but found myself paralyzed by fear. The dim light from the window cast strange shadows across his form, a reminder that nothing was ever truly what it seemed in Havenwood. Flickering light danced around us as if taunting me with questions without answers. Why was he here? What connection did he have to David? My mind raced with possibilities that spiraled out of control. As I scrambled back onto my feet, confusion morphed into desperation. I needed to act, standing still would only invite further horror into this already twisted reality. My hands shook uncontrollably as I grabbed my phone from my pocket, my lifeline back to normalcy. Dialing 911 felt surreal, each ring echoed in the hollow space around me like a taunt from fate itself. Would they believe me? Would anyone understand what had transpired in these walls? The operator answered just as I turned away from the body again, glancing nervously toward the door leading outside. 911, what's your emergency? The voice on the other end pierced through my daze. There's a man in my living room, I stammered, struggling to maintain composure amid rising dread. Can you tell me if he's conscious? She asked calmly yet urgently. No. He's not moving. My voice quivered with each word, horror clenched around my throat like an iron vice. Stay on the line with me, she instructed softly while simultaneously dispatching help to my location. As I waited for assistance to arrive, every second stretched painfully long like an eternity filled with haunting uncertainty. Shadows flickered along the walls again, an illusion playing tricks on my mind or perhaps something more sinister lurking just beyond perception. The dragging sound returned suddenly, this time closer than before, as if whatever force had brought that figure here was now inching towards me again. My heart raced faster than ever before. It pounded so violently against my chest that it drowned out all rational thought. I turned sharply toward where it originated. The staircase loomed ominously behind me, but nothing emerged from its depths except for darkness itself pooling around every corner of this cursed place. "Are you there?" came an anxious whisper over the line after what felt like forever waiting for reassurance amidst chaos. "Yes. Yes." I replied hastily, trying desperately not to let panic consume me entirely again. "Help is on its way," she assured gently but firmly while urging me not to move too much until they arrived, a task easier said than done when fear pressed upon every inch of existence within these walls surrounding me now. Then came another noise, a soft rustle followed by an unearthly whisper echoing through empty halls full of despair, and at that moment, dread coiled tighter around everything inside me until it became unbearable. If you're enjoying this story so far and want more twists and turns along this dark journey through Havenwood lore, leave your support by liking. I remember the chilling emptiness that filled my home after that dreadful night. The once cozy corners of my Havenwood residence now felt foreign, as if the very walls were whispering secrets I wasn't meant to hear. Shadows loomed larger, and every creak of the floorboard sent tremors through my spine. I needed answers, but skepticism was palpable in the air as Detective Ashley Miller stepped over the threshold, her weary eyes scanning the room with a mix of professionalism and doubt. "Are you sure about what you found?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with incredulity. I could sense Tyler hovering in the kitchen doorway, his face pale and his eyes wide with an anxiety that mirrored my own. I nodded slowly, wanting to convince her but feeling the weight of disbelief crushing down on me. "I found him here," I explained, my voice flat and mechanical as if I were reciting a script. "He just appeared." Detective Miller turned away from me, her expression unreadable as she took in the scene, a body that had vanished into thin air. My heart raced at the thought of it. How could something so grotesque simply disappear? It didn't seem possible. As she moved about the room, I watched her closely, hoping for a flicker of belief in her demeanor. Then Dr. John Troy arrived, local academic and part-time coroner, his eyes gleaming with curiosity as he approached the area where I had found the body. His demeanor was clinical, almost detached from the horror that had unfolded. "Let's see what we're dealing with," he murmured under his breath as he examined the area where the figure had lain. My stomach twisted when he began to inspect its hands with an almost morbid fascination. "Impossible bone structures," he muttered after a few moments, glancing back at me with confusion etched across his features. "These fingers, they're biological aberrations." My voice tightened in response to his words, a mix of professional disquiet and sheer dread washed over me. If this was true, if what we'd encountered defied every known principle, I was standing on shaky ground. Later that evening, after they left and silence settled heavily upon me once more, Detective Miller called with news that sent chills racing down my spine: "The body has vanished from the morgue." A wave of cold dread crashed over me. This wasn't an ordinary case of theft or mismanagement, it felt like something more sinister at play. I paced around my living room, clenching my fists in frustration as thoughts raced through my mind like a runaway train. This was not just about David anymore, it felt deeply entwined with something otherworldly lurking just beyond my understanding. The shadows seemed to grow thicker, darker, closing in on me each moment I remained still. Determined not to succumb to despair, I sought refuge within the dusty confines of the Havenwood Historical Society, an ancient building filled with tomes chronicling our town's lore and legends. As I pulled brittle newspapers from their resting places and opened ledgers yellowed by time, a sense of purpose ignited within me. I needed to unravel this mystery before it consumed me whole. Hours slipped away unnoticed as I pored over stories about Havenwood's past, tales filled with specters and dark figures said to haunt these very streets long before I ever walked them myself. Each page turned revealed fragments of history interwoven with dread, stories about those who vanished without a trace and others who spoke of shadows reaching out from beyond. With every revelation came an unsettling awareness. It felt as though an unseen presence lingered behind me while I read, something watching intently as if urging me deeper into its web of secrets. The tales spoke of individuals who had crossed paths with shadows similar to what I had encountered. None had returned unscathed. As night fell outside, casting eerie shapes through stained glass windows onto worn wooden floors, my resolve only grew stronger despite rising anxiety twisting like vines around my chest. Somewhere within these pages lay not just folklore but clues leading back to David's disappearance and perhaps even answers regarding that inexplicable figure haunting my home. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the hallway behind me, a noise sharp enough to cut through my concentration like glass shattering against stone. My heart thundered in response as I whipped around to face the source of disturbance. Shadows danced along walls illuminated by flickering lights overhead. Tyler? My voice trembled slightly at first before gaining strength. I hadn't expected him here after everything we'd experienced together recently, but there he stood at last in front of me looking pale yet determined. Sarah. He rushed forward into view while still looking over his shoulder apprehensively as if expecting something lurking just out of sight, the same fear visible across his features reflected back at me like a mirror held too close for comfort. "What are you doing here?" I asked breathlessly while trying not to betray how much seeing him stirred emotions deep within me, a blend of relief mixed with mounting dread for what lay ahead. "I couldn't stay away," he confessed quietly before glancing toward where darkness loomed thickest near one corner of this forgotten building, a place untouched by time yet teeming with secrets waiting patiently for someone brave enough, or foolish enough, to uncover them. My pulse quickened again, not from fear alone, but anticipation mingled tightly alongside uncertainty. Would we find answers together or merely deepen our entanglement within this nightmare? Together we moved cautiously toward that corner, the air growing heavier around us until silence reigned supreme once more like an ominous promise lingering just beyond reach. And then suddenly without warning, a chilling draft swept through causing nearby papers scattered upon desks nearby flutter wildly, and instinctively I took a step back drawing closer toward Tyler who remained steadfast beside me even amidst our shared fear mounting steadily higher than ever before. What awaited us there? Secrets hidden beneath layers upon layers long buried would soon be unearthed. I remember the oppressive weight of dread that filled the air, thickening with each passing moment as I watched Tyler pace our living room. His footsteps echoed against the walls, a chaotic rhythm that matched the frantic beating of my heart. He recounted a haunting dream where David had called him from a desolate, misty forest, his voice sounding wrong, distorted in ways that sent chills skittering down my spine. I tried to comfort him, murmuring reassurances about stress and exhaustion, but even as the words left my lips, I knew they rang hollow. The image of David's face haunted my own thoughts like a specter refusing to fade. Tyler's eyes reflected a storm of emotions, fear, confusion, desperation, as he spoke. Each word poured from his lips like a plea for understanding. "It was so real, Jess," he said, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I swear I could hear him calling for help." My stomach twisted at the thought. Was it merely a figment of his imagination or something more sinister? The shadows seemed to dance around us, as if eavesdropping on our despair. That evening, I sought refuge in the Havenwood Historical Society, desperate to find answers hidden within its dusty archives. As I combed through brittle newspapers and yellowed pages filled with tales long forgotten, an old leather-bound journal caught my eye. It lay tucked away in a dark corner of the room, its spine cracked and fragile. I hesitated before opening it. Curiosity clawed at me while caution whispered warnings in the back of my mind. With trembling fingers, I turned the pages and found an unsettling colonial-era account detailing shadows reaching from the woods and the taken ones. Each word felt like an incantation resurrecting long-buried fears. At that moment, a chill crept down my spine as though unseen eyes were watching me from beyond the veil of reality. I shivered involuntarily. Something was lurking just outside my perception. The weight of history pressed heavily upon me as stories of lost souls entwined with our present reality began to blur together. Later that night, when I finally closed up the library and stepped outside into the cool evening air, I felt an odd prickling sensation on my neck, a warning sign that something was amiss. The fog rolled in thickly around me as if nature itself conspired to conceal whatever darkness lurked just beyond sight. As I walked toward home, shadows stretched unnaturally across the cobblestone path underfoot. A fleeting glimpse caught my eye, a shadow so impossibly long that it defied explanation, before it melted back into the dense fog like smoke dissipating into nothingness. My heart raced as I hurried home, fear propelling my steps forward faster than reason could keep up with. Arriving at our back door sent panic spiraling through me again. Something was wrong. The dew-covered soil near our entrance revealed an odd imprint, a peculiar groove pressed into the ground that led directly from the woods toward our house before abruptly stopping at our threshold. My breath hitched in disbelief. How could this be? I crouched low to inspect it further. The eerie silence surrounding me amplified every sound. The rustle of leaves seemed louder than ever before while an unsettling feeling gripped my chest tightly. Had whatever had taken David returned? A sense of urgency surged through me as Tyler's frantic dreams replayed in my mind like a broken record. Entering our home felt like stepping into enemy territory. Shadows flickered menacingly along walls painted with memories now tainted by fear and uncertainty. I found Tyler sitting on the edge of the couch, his face pale and drawn tight with anxiety when he saw me enter. "Did you find anything?" he asked urgently, his voice trembling slightly. I shook my head slowly but felt compelled to share what I discovered about those dark accounts entwined with our town's past. The stories of shadows creeping forth from deep within those woods were woven into Havenwood's very fabric like threads in an ancient tapestry too terrifying to unravel completely. A flicker of understanding crossed Tyler's face before despair settled back in again. He seemed torn between wanting answers and fearing what those answers might bring forth from their hidden depths. "Jess," he said hesitantly after a moment's silence hung heavy between us like impending thunderclouds ready to unleash chaos upon us both. What if we're not meant to know?" His words struck deep within me. A profound truth resonated beneath layers of doubt gnawing at my resolve. "We have to try," I insisted vehemently despite rising anxiety tightening its grip around me once more. A reminder that ignorance wouldn't shield us from danger lurking just beyond sight. The shadows felt alive now, an entity encroaching upon our lives fueled by fear and desperation, threatening to engulf everything we held dear if we didn't confront them head-on before it was too late. As we sat together amid flickering candlelight casting wavering silhouettes across familiar surfaces distorted by doubt and paranoia alike, I couldn't shake off feelings gnawing at me deep down inside. Something terrible awaited us just out there, in those cursed woods beyond where light dared not tread anymore. Determined not to succumb further into despair or helplessness, I resolved then, we would uncover every fragment hidden beneath layers obscured by time until we reached truths too powerful for darkness alone to shroud entirely. And so began our race against time, not merely for David anymore but for ourselves, to break free from this consuming terror threatening all we cherished most dearly before it consumed everything whole. I remember the dense fog that wrapped around me as I stepped onto the Whispering Pines Trail, a place steeped in local legend. The air was thick with an unsettling stillness, an eerie quiet that amplified the rhythmic crunch of twigs beneath my feet. Each step deeper into the Havenwood State Park felt like an invitation to the unknown, pulling me towards something I couldn't fully understand. My heart pounded like a drum, urging me forward despite the whispers of trepidation echoing in my mind. At that moment, I felt the oppressive silence of the misty forest closing in around me, a heavy blanket that chilled my skin and quickened my pulse. The trees loomed like ancient sentinels, their gnarled branches reaching out as if to ensnare me. I recalled stories from the journal, the ones that spoke of the veil thinning in this very place. My fingers brushed against the rough bark of a nearby tree, grounding me as I fought against the growing sense of foreboding. Shadows flitted at the edge of my vision, teasing my senses, but when I turned to look, nothing remained. Then I spotted him, standing at the edge of a clearing, a figure emerging from the swirling fog. My breath caught in my throat as recognition washed over me. It was the same man who had appeared lifeless on my floor. But now he seemed impossibly distorted, his fingers stretched across the damp earth like grotesque, pale vines easily 10 feet long. The sight sent waves of horror crashing over me. How could this be? Panic surged through my veins as I tried to scream, but my throat locked up tight. My body felt paralyzed by an unnatural fear, and yet there he stood, his presence both familiar and terrifying. As if sensing my struggle, I heard my lips move without any sound reaching my ears. The words echoed in my mind, "I see David now, Jessica. Would you like to see where he went?" A jolt of recognition coursed through me. Those were not just words, they were an invitation laced with something dark and insidious. Desperation clawed at me as I found my voice, a raw whisper barely breaking free from my lips. "Where is he? What did you do to my husband?" Each syllable felt heavy with dread as they hung in the cold air between us. In response to my demand, I watched in disbelief as his impossibly long fingers began to retract with unnatural speed, coiling back toward him like serpents retreating into shadows. The figure collapsed suddenly, like a marionette with its strings cut, and for a brief moment, fear transformed into bewilderment. My form dissolved into mist just as quickly as he had appeared before me. The chill of realization swept over me. Whatever connection existed between this entity and David was far more complex than I'd ever imagined. The clearing fell silent again, leaving only the faint impressions of my fingers in the soft ground, a reminder that even here within nature's embrace, darkness lurked beneath its surface. My heart raced with urgency. There had to be more to uncover about what had transpired between David and this malevolent figure. As I stepped closer to where he had stood, determination ignited within me. I would not let fear dictate this narrative any longer. Suddenly, a rustling sound pulled me back into reality, a reminder that despite facing such horror alone moments ago, I was not entirely isolated here among these ancient trees. With renewed resolve coursing through me, I decided to press forward deeper into whispering pines and confront whatever awaited beyond its twisted paths. The air grew thicker still, each breath filled with anticipation and dread intermingled with hope for answers long sought after. It was time to unearth what lay hidden within this haunting forest, a truth buried beneath layers of folklore and fear, and discover how it all connected back to David's disappearance. As shadows danced around me once more, each flicker igniting memories both painful and poignant, I walked on determinedly. Whatever awaited would not deter me from finding clarity amidst chaos. A new sense of urgency propelled every step forward, no longer haunted by paralyzing terror but rather motivated by love for David and a need for resolution. With each passing moment on this treacherous trail leading deeper into despair yet also possibility, I could feel something shifting within myself, perhaps even within these woods themselves, the air thickening with promises unfulfilled yet calling out for acknowledgement. I would uncover it all, even if it meant confronting demons lurking just beyond sight. I remember the suffocating tension that clung to the air as I sat across from Detective Miller in the dim light of my living room. My voice trembled, hoarse from lack of sleep, as I recounted the impossible encounter I'd experienced. "He was there, standing right in front of me," I said, trying to keep my tone steady. Detective Miller maintained her professional demeanor, but I could see the flicker of doubt in her eyes. "You must understand how insane this sounds," I added, feeling a wave of desperation crash over me. After our conversation, I returned home with a sense of dread pooling in my stomach. The house felt colder, emptier. When I entered the kitchen, Tyler was pacing like a caged animal, his face pale and eyes wide with terror. "Jess," he exclaimed, his voice cracking with panic. "We have to go to Whispering Pines Inn. David is waiting for me there." A place he had never mentioned before. My heart sank at the thought. "Tyler, we don't know if that's safe," I replied softly, trying to reason with him. Yet inside, a sickening realization washed over me. Dr. John Troy had died just days later in room 34 of that very inn, an apparent suicide that sent chills down my spine as fragments of memory resurfaced. The way he had looked at me during our last conversation haunted me. Something about his eyes hinted at knowledge beyond comprehension. I turned away from Tyler's frantic pleas and took a deep breath. The walls seemed to close in around me as I recalled the details surrounding Dr. Troy's death. His suicide note had been heavily redacted when Detective Miller handed it to me earlier that day, a chilling fragment of what remained read. I thought I could understand it. "There is only the growing. The reaching. The invitation." What invitation? My gut twisted at the implications. My hands trembled as I opened my own copy of Dr. Troy's note once more and read the final words scrawled across the page: "Tell Sarah Mitchell I'm sorry. Tell my husband saw it too. Tell me not to answer when it calls." Each word felt like an echo reverberating through my mind. David was connected to this horror somehow. "Tyler," I said softly, stepping closer to him as he continued to pace wildly. "We need to figure this out together." But even as I spoke those words, doubt gnawed at me. Could we really face whatever darkness lay ahead? Suddenly, the front door creaked open slightly on its own accord, a sound so unsettling that it made my skin crawl. Instinctively, I rushed toward it and found nothing but darkness beyond the threshold. The night air hung thick with an unspoken threat. "I swear it called for me," Tyler insisted again, his voice rising in pitch as he glanced nervously towards the door behind me. "It's waiting. We have to go." His panic wrapped around me like a noose tightening with each passing second. I grasped his shoulders firmly and locked eyes with him, searching for some clarity amid his turmoil. "Listen to me. We need a plan," I urged him, but all reason seemed lost on him now. As if on cue, two orderlies appeared at the edge of my vision, a stark contrast against the dimly lit room behind them, and approached Tyler gently yet firmly. "It's going to be okay," one said soothingly while another placed a hand on Tyler's back. "No!" Tyler shouted suddenly, tearing himself away from their grasp and stumbling back against the wall as if seeking refuge from their presence or perhaps from something darker lurking just outside our reality. I watched helplessly as they gently escorted him toward the door, the echoes of his frantic pleas ringing in my ears. "Go find Dad. He needs us." My heart shattered at how powerless I felt in that moment. Here was my brother being taken away while shadows loomed larger than life around us. The weight of inadequacy pressed down on me like an anchor, dragging me deeper into despair. I wanted so desperately to protect him from whatever evil loomed over us all, but instead felt utterly defeated by forces beyond comprehension. As they led Tyler away into uncertainty, his cries fading into silence, I stood frozen in place amidst memories that clawed at my sanity. Each recollection now seemed tainted by fear and loss. In those fleeting moments before they disappeared down the hallway with him, reality slipped further from my grasp. The whispers grew louder within my mind until they culminated into a deafening crescendo that left nothing but a chilling emptiness behind. I knew then that something sinister awaited us all, something hungry for souls trapped within its grasp, and soon enough, I'd find out just how far its reach extended. I remember the unsettling stillness of my home as I sat hunched over my laptop, surrounded by a mountain of papers. Each document I sifted through felt like a fragment of a dark puzzle, a mystery that was desperately trying to reveal itself. I filed multiple Freedom of Information requests, determined to piece together the terrifying pattern that haunted my thoughts. My fingers danced over the keyboard, typing frantically as the clock ticked ominously in the background. The police reports I received were heavily redacted, but they contained enough chilling details to send shivers down my spine. I discovered records of 3 more unidentified bodies, each found in towns that mirrored Havenwood's isolation. They all had impossibly long fingers and had vanished from secure facilities shortly after their discovery. A wave of nausea washed over me as I realized the implications. This wasn't just happening in my town, it was part of something larger, something sinister. I thought back to the witness testimonies I had read, each one recounting an encounter with these bodies. A grim consistency echoed through their accounts. Each person who had come across them had lost a loved one, a spouse or sibling, without explanation, just like Tyler and me. The connections were haunting, binding us all together in this web of despair and confusion. My heart raced as I began to form my theory, though it sounded insane even to myself. These weren't merely bodies but invitations, doorways reaching across realities as Dr. Troy had described in his fragmented notes. At that moment, a chill swept through the room as I meticulously checked all the locks on my doors and windows for what felt like the 100th time that night. My home was becoming less a sanctuary and more a fortress against an unseen threat lurking just beyond its walls. Each click of the lock reverberated like a heartbeat in the silence, amplifying my sense of paranoia. Days blurred into nights filled with research and dread. Every creak of wood or gust of wind made me jump, reminding me that safety was an illusion easily shattered. When I visited Tyler in the facility, seeing him struggle through his slow recovery only deepened my sense of isolation. His eyes held shadows, an unspoken fear we both shared but could not articulate fully to one another. "I'm trying to understand," I whispered during one visit, searching for some semblance of connection between us amid our shared trauma. He looked up at me with pain etched on his face, frustration boiling beneath his surface. "You're not supposed to be here," he replied sharply, his voice tinged with desperation. "It's not safe for you." My chest constricted as those words hung heavily between us like a dark omen. Despite our physical proximity, an invisible chasm widened between us, a reminder that we were both grappling with horrors beyond comprehension. Each night became an exercise in vigilance. Sleep eluded me like a ghost slipping through my fingers. Instead of restful dreams, nightmares plagued my mind, a cacophony of whispers calling out from the depths of darkness where light dared not tread. I walked through Havenwood streets during the day, feeling exposed under the watchful gaze of passers-by who seemed oblivious to my turmoil. The familiar sights, the bakery where we once shared pastries and laughter, felt tainted now by shadows that clung stubbornly to every corner. One evening while combing through old newspaper archives at the local library, I stumbled upon another article referencing disappearances from years past, names long forgotten but tied together by eerie similarities, unexplained absences after encounters with strange phenomena or sightings near Whispering Pines Inn. I felt my heart race as pieces clicked into place. they were all connected somehow. The inn loomed large in my thoughts now, not just as a location tied to David's last known whereabouts but also as part of this creeping horror enveloping our lives. Returning home late that night, anxiety twisted within me like vines wrapping around a tree trunk, tightening until it threatened to snap under pressure. My hands trembled slightly as I turned each lock once more before retreating into bed. Sleep was elusive but necessary if I hoped to maintain any semblance of sanity amidst growing dread. In those quiet moments before exhaustion claimed me again, I closed my eyes and let fear wash over me like cold water pouring down from above. I needed answers before it consumed us completely. As days turned into weeks without resolution or clarity regarding David's fate, or Tyler's mental state, I grappled with despair like an ever-present companion haunting every waking moment, yet still hope flickered weakly within me despite its fragility. Today, when I look back at those frantic weeks spent piecing together fragmented truths about loss and longing, I realize how deeply intertwined our lives had become, with darkness creeping ever closer. It seemed destined for confrontation whether we liked it or not. And so there lay ahead a path paved with uncertainty, a choice between facing whatever lay beyond or remaining trapped within this cycle forever. I remember the passage of time in Havenwood as a slow, agonizing crawl, filled with shadows that seemed to stretch and twist into something sinister. For years have passed since I first felt the chill of that dragging sound echoing through my home, a sound that still haunts my nights and colors my days with dread. Each passing moment is a chilling reminder of what transpired, and I find myself writing this confession to reach out, hoping someone might understand the darkness that enveloped my life. At that moment, when I awoke last week at precisely 2:47 a.m., the familiar dragging sound was back. My heart raced as I lay paralyzed in bed, too terrified to move. The sickening whisper of something slithering across my living room floor echoed in my ears like a nightmare refusing to fade. I didn't go downstairs this time. Instead, I sat frozen under the covers with my lights on and door locked. The shadows outside seemed to pulse against the windowpane as dawn approached, its first rays piercing through and finally dispelling the unsettling sound. When I finally descended at 8 a.m., an unnatural cold greeted me, a chilling presence seeping from the floor beneath the living room window. As I approached, dread coiled within me like a serpent ready to strike. My hands shook as I brushed away the dust on the windowsill. That's when I saw them, 10 thin grooves pressed into the fine dust, leading from outside against the glass. They were unmistakably finger-like marks, evidence that whatever lurked beyond had been reaching for me, learning to extend its grasp further into my world. The realization hit me like a punch: these were not just mere coincidences or figments of imagination. My life had become defined by constant vigilance, an unending cycle of fear that dictated every choice I made. I changed my routines meticulously, avoiding unknown calls while frequently checking beneath doors for any telltale shadows of those elongated fingers. Each day felt like a countdown toward an inevitable confrontation with something far more insidious than I'd ever dared to imagine. As memories flooded back, David's disappearance intertwined with Tyler's unraveling mind, I struggled to maintain my grip on reality amid this growing madness. The walls felt like they were closing in. Havenwood had transformed from a picturesque town into a labyrinth of horror and despair where shadows danced at the periphery of my vision. I sought solace in mundane activities, grocery shopping or sipping coffee at the local cafe, but even those moments were tainted by an underlying anxiety that gnawed at me incessantly. I would glance around nervously, expecting to see those spectral fingers reaching out from behind corners or lurking within shadows cast by flickering lights. Days turned into weeks without any sign of relief from this torment. Each night brought new echoes of fear as sleep eluded me completely. Nightmares morphed into waking terrors where David's voice called out for help amid a foggy forest just beyond reach. The entity's relentless pursuit left me feeling utterly isolated in a world teetering on the brink of madness, a psychological torment sharper than any physical threat could ever be. During one particularly restless night, driven by desperation for answers or closure, I found myself combing through old files again, the remnants of Dr. Troy's research littering my desk like forgotten dreams. My heart sank deeper as pieces fell into place. His fragmented notes hinted at connections between our lives and those lost souls who had vanished under similar circumstances, their stories echoing mine like distant whispers carried by an unseen wind. Every thread woven together formed an intricate tapestry revealing undeniable truths. We were all part of something larger, a web spun tight around us by unseen hands eager to ensnare yet another unsuspecting victim. And so it continued, a haunting cycle defined by dread and despair until all reason blurred into obscurity. Just yesterday evening, while sitting alone at home once more, I heard it again, that familiar dragging sound creeping toward me through silence thick enough to choke on. Frozen in place once more, I glanced at my phone only to see it was midnight already, another hour lost amid swirling thoughts consumed by darkness creeping ever closer. In those moments before dawn broke anew, I realized how futile it was trying to escape what lay ahead. It would find me no matter how many locks I turned or precautions I took. Today, when I look back at this journey filled with anguish, I learned that true horror lies not merely in what we can see but rather within what remains hidden behind closed doors, the things we cannot understand or confront directly yet continue haunting our every waking moment. Finally, did you like this story? Leave a like, comment your thoughts and subscribe for more stories.